Just 3 days after Zion Williamson said he felt fine physically and could pretty much do everything on the court, Pelicans VP of Basketball Ops David Griffin clarified the progress of the All-Star forward. Zion has been sidelined since January 2nd with a hamstring injury and was ruled out from the play-in tournament. He said on Tuesday he would return to the court when he felt like himself again. But today, Griffin clarified that Williamson was not cleared to play and wasn't even cleared to do full-court 3-on-3 work in practice. Griffin emphasized that Zion didn't choose not to play, he simply wasn't cleared.
I know everybody wants there to be some amazing story behind all of this. There's not that. The kid said I'm fine physically because he's not currently injured. He was never cleared to even play 3-on-3 full court. Like, that's not where he was. So these things get frustrating when you're dealing with them and nothing that's being said about the kid is particularly factual one direction or another.